Hi guys, Sarah here from Highland Haven Australian Shepherds and Highland Haven Dog Training, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 6 of Dog for Thought. Joining me is my co-host, daughter, and dog trainer extraordinaire, Sophie.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Soph, what's going on? Give us an update in Dogland.
So Evie's has been pretty much almost a perfect mother. But we have noticed, I think you kind of briefly talked about it on the Instagram about, what's it called again?
Maternal aggression.
Maternal aggression. And, that was kind of shocking because we've never experienced that in our many years of breeding.
All right, so let's go back to the beginning. This is about a week ago at this point.
Yeah, about a week ago.
Gianna was here. It was like 9 o'clock at night. She was downstairs. She sleeps in the whelping room with Evie. When she's here, there's an actual human bed in there and everything. And she texted me and sent me a video of Evie showing teeth, growling, and then snapping at a puppy, and then she said, "Is this normal?" And I went straight downstairs because that's actually not normal. Not at this stage. So, some might think, well, mother dogs, they discipline their young. They do when they're 6, 7, 8 weeks old and older, when they can actually comprehend and take a correction. These are blind and deaf puppies, infant puppies, tiny, tiny puppies. So she was not correcting them. I don't know what was triggering her, but it was pretty jarring to see.
And it was really only one of the puppies that she was targeting.
At the time, right.
Yeah. She ended up targeting like another one, but she never made any contact.
No, she snapped at them, but didn't make any contact. But I was quite concerned. Next morning, I ended up going to. She showed a couple more. She had a couple more incidents where she didn't snap at a puppy, but definitely fixated on it.
Yeah, like would hyperfixate. After she nursed them and cleaned them, she would like look over the box and like hyperfixate and start doing like low growls, which was unusual.
Yeah, strange. So there's two schools of thought with maternal aggression. First of all, we've never experienced it. It's not terribly typical for Australian Shepherds. Mm-mm. It is typical for some other breeds. I don't know about lots, but some other breeds, it's kind of a common occurrence, and that is just part and parcel of breeding those types of dogs. It's not terribly typical in Aussies. However, individuals are individuals. So there's two schools of thought. There's the medical professional, the veterinarian, and then there's experienced breeders. If you talk to experienced breeders, they will tell you that's a calcium deficiency. If a dog acts completely out of character, which is for Evie,
very out of character for Evie.
In this way, she is likely has a calcium deficiency going on. You do need to do a process of elimination on a bunch of other things, like is she in pain for some reason? Does she have the beginnings of mastitis? Are the puppy's teeth coming in? They were not. Whatever. Did she not, maybe does she have a retained placenta, or does she have a fever, or, one of 50 different things. Mm-hmm. Is she hungry? Is she thirsty? Is she too hot?
Was there like a toy or a bone or an object that she was guarding around the puppies? Like,
right.
There's a series of different environmental or medical reasons that this could be happening.
Yes, because even a dog who does not resource guard food normally, when she's pregnant and nursing and has these tremendous calorie requirements, can be quite resource guardy to her own puppies of her food, which is why we never feed the mom in the whelping box with the puppies. She always eats elsewhere. So if a puppy just sort of crawls over unknowingly, she's not going to snap at that puppy. So it was going to be a day or two to get the calcium from Amazon. So I decided to drive 30 minutes to Connecticut to pick up calcium paste directly from our reproductive vet. He was not thrilled at me giving the calcium to her. I think he was convinced that there was another reason that was causing this, and that, giving calcium can be a tricky thing, because if you give too much, you can actually cause much, much worse problems for the bitch. So we did agree that I would give it, but in a very small dose and just for a couple of days, and that I likely wouldn't see any change in her behavior for 24 hours after giving her that dose. So I came home. I did give her the calcium paste in a low dose. She did fixate on puppies a couple of times during that day, but by evening she had relaxed And by the next morning, she was completely back to normal. As of this recording, we've seen no other signs of maternal aggression.
Nope.
So that's interesting. So Gianna wanted to know if it's resolved, if it cured her, if the calcium worked. And the honest truth is, who knows? There's a lot of factors. Could it just been a blip? And if we had not, if we had not treated it at all, would have just naturally disappeared? Was it something that she, was she in pain for some reason that weren't able to discern? Who knows? But since then, she's been great, back to her normal, lovely, sweet, and she never showed any aggression to us.
No. Well, that first night, afternoon when you told me, I went in the box like I normally do, and she snapped around my hands, which was unusual as well.
Okay. All right.
So she was kind of being more like intense with me anyways. I don't know about you and Gianna.
She didn't with me and Gianna, but that's okay. So that's interesting. Since then, she's definitely chilled out for that. Yes.
Yeah. No, I haven't seen it since that day.
So we don't know what caused it. We don't know if we resolved it with the calcium. I did give it to her for 3 days, and then stopped, and it has not recurred since then. That doesn't mean it won't. It's just one of those things. And it is, every litter has a ripple or two. No litter goes off perfectly. You wouldn't expect it to. These are living creatures. So this is Evie's ripple. This is the little ripple with her and this particular experience with this litter. So that was something new. And the other more difficult thing for you and me is that she can't be left alone with the puppies again.
Yeah.
Right,
so now
for this
that
litter.
when Gianna goes back home for the few days, because she like periodically like comes throughout the week, we can't just like leave her out in the room. So me and you have to do more shifts. So the worst shifts are, I mean, for you is the 11 o'clock shift. You have to go down there and do it. And I have to do a 3 a.m. shift.
Well, that sounds way worse than the 11 o'clock shift.
It's
but
actually not that bad because I don't mind it. It doesn't bother
good,
me.
because I do not want to get up at 3.
Well, the thing is if you get up at 3 a.m., then you'll be up super early. And then I have to get up earlier. So.
Yeah, so I do the 11 o'clock feeding. And then, she goes in the crate right next to the whelping box. And the puppies are certainly old enough to go 3-4 hours without eating. So it's not an issue at all. Obviously, we'd like her to have full access to her puppies the whole time and have it be very natural. But in this case, she's no longer trustworthy with the puppies. It's just because the consequences can be so severe if something were to happen. For Evie, too, because, you feel some kind of way about a dog who hurts her own puppies, and so you have to make sure that you set her up for success, do lots of prevention here, even though, your heart wants you to just, she seems fine, prevention is the key here to make sure that she can't harm them.
And it's easy enough. It's not like we have to like super micromanage her when she's down there. Once we're down there, she hasn't shown any of the behavior. So we just kind of naturally sit around and let her go in and out of the box. And she's fine. It's just making sure you have an eye on her in case something does happen. It'd be terrible if we went downstairs and there was a couple puppies that didn't make it for whatever reason.
Yeah, that would be horrible.
And then on top of it, then it's just like the ethics, right, of should we be breeding this dog again? If this is going to be a periodic thing happening over and over again.
Right.
So
we'll be more prepared for this with Evie next time. I did mark it in the journal. It happens at around day 9 postpartum. So we'll be much more aware next time and be prepared for it and be ready with calcium and see if that resolves it again, if it recurs. It could just be that she is a maiden bitch. This is her first litter. She's inexperienced. She was feeling overwhelmed and tired and just felt snappy. And
on top of it, like a couple of days later, I cut their little nails because it gets super sharp and it like will cut, like, as they're nursing and pushing on her, they'll like scratch her up. And so I always make sure, at least if I'm going to cut the nails, I'm going to cut the front nails so they don't scratch the mama up as much. And I forgot to do the one puppy that she was targeting.
But he wasn't anywhere near her when she snapped at him.
It's just so weird.
It is weird. It's very strange. Who knows why that happens? She might not even know why that happens.
Yeah.
Chemicals and brain
Hormones.
chemistry and hormones are a crazy thing.
Yeah. Anyways.
Well, she's back to her normal, lovely self. And regardless, we only have less than a week really to do nighttime shifts because the puppies will start on solid food this weekend.
Yep.
This coming weekend.
My bad.
So, and at that point, once they're on solid food, they don't need to feed off of her, but more than twice a day. So, and we'll do that for about a week, and then she'll go home with her mom, and the puppies are weaned, and they'll stay here. So, we only have a few more days of this overnight feedings.
And then it's a different type of shift that we have to go
Then
downstairs
it's
and do.
actually much more work for us, but
Yeah.
the work is generally not in the middle of the night, which is nice.
Yeah, we can sleep throughout the night. It's just more shifts throughout the day with,
Right. So they'll start to get weaned this weekend, and then Evie will continue to wean them through that whole following week. And then that following weekend, when they're 4 weeks old, she'll go home. Mm-hmm. So again, this is the first time we've bred a dog who doesn't live in the house with us. So we'll see how realistic that is. Whether, it'd be nice if Gianna was close, because then even when they're 4 weeks old, she could come over once a day and let her feed them. And sort of have a second week of weaning where you're just on one meal a day, one milk meal a day.
I mean,
We'll see.
We'll see, because
Depends on the litter.
Yeah.
Sometimes the litters are really into solid food. And if they are, then they get most of their nutrition through the food and much less from their mother.
where the last litter was not, because
Last litter wasn't doing solid food.
they were not into the solid food. So I mean, it depends on the litters. It's
Yep.
weird. Sometimes it's just like that. Where like Twiggy, it was on the dot. Like she was upstairs, barely went downstairs. She did not even want to go downstairs at all. And then even when we would let her downstairs, they would annoy her, and she would be like, "I don't want." She would run right back upstairs again. So it depends on the female, depends on the puppies, depends on how much they're eating. So
Yep.
we'll see what happens.
Don't get me yawning. So I guess maybe we can segue into today's topic. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to talk about prevention today. Prevention is part of management, right? Setting up an environment so your dog can be successful, right? Understanding who they are and setting up the environment that has natural bumpers, natural gutter guards kind of thing, so that they can't get into so much trouble. But prevention is a huge key thing for dog training, like the whole dog, training the dog. And I don't think it's talked about enough how important prevention is. And some of our clients are really good at preventing some things, right? And they don't even realize it. And perhaps our listeners, if they thought about it, be like, oh yeah, no, I'm really good at preventing this, that, or the other thing. And it's just so second nature. I don't think it's talked about enough.
I also think it's preference, right? So for me, I do not like dogs jumping on me at all. Like, it's biggest pet peeve. And so I make sure when we have young puppies that they are not allowed to jump on me. I will invite them up, but they are not allowed to jump on me unless they're invited. So I mean, sometimes it's just natural. Like, I don't like a dog jumping, or I don't like I have a garden in the backyard, therefore I've prevented my dog from like going into the garden and digging. So I think it's a lot of prevention is not
Conscious.
conscious. It's just something you don't like, so therefore you've made sure to make it clear, and therefore you're preventing a behavior without even consciously realizing you are.
Right. So, I mean, some things are built in for prevention, like a leash prevents your dog from running off, right? We have tools that are prevention tools. But for puppies, prevention is as much a part of training them, right? So the prevention piece is as important as the positive reinforcement piece, right? So yes, we want to, and as important, if not more important than punishment, right? So if we get really good at preventing certain behaviors, punishment is never necessary because the behaviors never occur. So we can talk about how dogs are such creatures of habit. their neural pathways, when they're created, will just keep getting used over and over again when they're properly reinforced, either environmentally reinforced or artificially reinforced by the people in their lives or whatever. But preventing those pathways from being created at all is such an easy way to raise a dog if you pay close attention. Tool is a good example. She has very, very few bad habits.
It's
Because
also the type of dog you get too, like behavioral wise. Like some dogs are easier to prevent than others.
yeah, true. I mean, if you have a dog who has a real high drive to do something that's incompatible, like barking, right? Like a beagle, it's going to be much harder to prevent that nuisance barking than it would be for a dog who's naturally not very vocal, for sure. I would argue that it's even more important for that beagle to focus on prevention, because when a dog like a beagle engages in a behavior that's so deeply ingrained in their breed, barking beagle, once they do it once, it creates like a neural pathway that's like on fire.
Yeah.
Right. It's so self-rewarding, that barking. And if anyone's had a beagle, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The barking itself is rewarding to them. It's
Or
self-rewarding.
dachshunds.
Dachshunds are another one. Right. The yappiness, you're like, what are you even barking at? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
And then once that loop starts, it like won't stop. Like now it's like any little movement, that's what they're going to be barking at.
it feels
because
good.
it feels good. Yeah.
Reactivity with Australian Shepherds or with herding breeds, super common problem, because it is so, the neural pathway is so incredibly rewarding, intrinsically rewarding for the dog.
I mean, with Twiggy, I really worked hard on trying to prevent her leash reactivity, and it still came out anyways. And I've still managed the behavior. So like once you can't prevent it because they're, Twiggy's so driven. And it's interesting because she's leash reactive, but if I walk on her, if I'm walking her or running her in the middle of the woods, she's not reactive at all because she's not on the leash. It simply has to do with her being on the leash, which is interesting.
Well, feeling trapped.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think that if you were to raise Twiggy now from puppyhood, you would do a much better
I would
job.
do it completely differently. I mean, even with Twiggy, because she has such, like, I just would have done it differently because she's so driven. So I would have prevented it a different way rather than the way I prevented it, if that makes sense.
Well, you didn't prevent it.
No, I didn't. But like with the
The
jumping.
way you reassociated it, reconditioned it.
Yeah.
So we had to recondition her.
Yeah.
Right. We had to recondition Deacon because he was the worst reactor as far as leash reactivity in the house.
I mean, part of Deacon is we never really walked him on leash. So he had to relearn how to walk on a leash because we ran him in the woods when he was a puppy. And then by the time we decided, I think it was like COVID and there was all these people in the woods and we were just like, oh, well, let's just like go walk at the park. And we realized, oh man, like we have never really walked him on
like
leash.
a person couldn't even walk by. He lost his shit. Remember I yelled at that poor guy?
Yeah. Yeah. I just remember like
I felt bad for him when I was done. The poor guy, all he did was say hello to Deacon. And I was like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It was just one of those times where you're just overwhelmed by your dog's behavior.
It was a shame response. It was,
For sure.
my dog is reacting to literally somebody doing absolutely nothing. You know?
That poor guy.
Yeah. But we've learned from it. And I think that was kind of, even though it was a bad experience, I feel like our conversation after that happened was really productive.
You think?
Yeah. I mean, I think you still had a bit of the shame response, but who doesn't? And I think I was just like, oh, I don't think that guy did anything wrong. I think we need to work on his leash reactivity. And I think you exploding doesn't help him. You're joining him in the leash reactivity. And then we started researching and doing like
Way
more
different stuff with reactivity,
Yeah.
which worked like a charm with him.
Yep. Worked really, because he's so food motivated. So
But that took I think I walked him every single day for 6 straight weeks.
if it wasn't for COVID, I think it would have taken a lot longer. But because it was COVID and because, the world was shut down.
And there was a lot more people in the park too.
Yep.
So I mean, that's definitely something that we've done differently with our younger dogs, simply because of the way our lives have configured since then. We don't have access to off-leash trails right, 500 feet from our house where we can just walk and avoid leash walking in public. With our older dogs, we just didn't do a lot of leash walking because I, love running them in the woods.
Well,
And they love it more than anything in the world.
It's so convenient.
And it's so good for them. They
Yeah.
just love it.
Yep.
But it doesn't make your dog civilized.
Well, it doesn't make them whole. It's one part of activity. It's not everything that they need to be able to be happy.
Right.
So
we definitely have sort of, well, first of all, like I say, we don't have access to woods where we feel comfortable running them off leash anymore where we live. But even if we did, I would do a lot of focusing on just plain old leash walking.
Yep.
Because it is so, in that first year, it is so important to leash walk your dog. Even if you think you never will again, it's so important to spend that first year desensitizing them to the world. You can accomplish so many things by having a polite leash walker. It's good for your relationship, right? It works on engagement. It works on desensitizing to all kinds of things in the world. Works on impulse control. Prevents reactivity. I mean, then that's just a few things that good leash walking does.
I mean, we can tell the difference between a dog that's in the city, who grew up in the city, and a dog who grew up in the suburbs, because city dogs tend to be like 10 times better, because when they're young, they're exposed to loud noises, trucks, people, smells, garbage on the ground, you name it. Oh, bikes, scooters, electric vehicles, they're exposed to all these things. So, and it's small quarters. So they have to walk really in close proximity to people and other dogs.
Yeah.
So they have to be good on leash. And if they aren't good on leash, then they can't really be in the city. And for the most part, they get rehomed.
Right.
So.
Right. Or trained. Yes. I mean, I think if you do all that leash walking stuff, you're going to prevent a lot of behaviors that come out with a dog who's not used to being regularly out in the world. It's kind of counterintuitive when you're a dog breeder, when you're selling puppies, the stereotypical, do you have a fenced in yard? Some breeders will require that you have a fenced in yard and a certain number of acreage and all this nonsense. When the reality is, in my experience, people who don't have that and have to walk them usually have a better relationship with the puppy, because they can't just stand out there in the backyard, shivering and waiting for the puppy to do something. They have to actually go down the street. And that, by its very nature,
Creates
relationship and
trust,
engagement and all the things that we talk about. So, and that's true with city people too. City people who really love their dogs tend to spend more time with them, ironically, than people who live in the suburbs, because they have to.
Yep.
The dog, they don't have the luxury of just opening the back door and the dog runs outside and barks, sits in the backyard and barks at the neighbors all day, right? They have to actually put them on leash, whether they're using a leash walking or dog walking service or they're doing it themselves. The dogs are getting out there.
Yep.
So it's a balance. It's a delicate balance. I don't like to sell to people who don't own their apartment or home, simply because if you don't get your leash renewed, it's really hard to find a place that will allow dogs. And I don't want any of my puppies to have to be rehomed because people can't find a place to rent. Right?
Well, I feel like your criteria of selling puppies has changed, but the baseline has stayed the same.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So like we've definitely sold a handful of puppies to like people who live in Queens and stuff like that, which we used to be like no city people at all, because Aussies need more
Queens and apartments. Queens can be houses and backyards, so that would be different. But yes, I have sold to people who own apartments, who live in the apartments but own the apartments, that kind of stuff. If it's the right, if the interview goes well and I feel like this is a person who is a good match for one of my puppies. So you need to take a drink.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we go back to prevention a little bit, we can talk about Tula and give some real life examples of the things I mean, at this point, she's a year old. She is in her teenage years, right? So she is a bit of a brat with the other dogs, a bit obnoxious. Definitely being more of a handful than she was before. But once she gets through this stage, she's going to go back to being her lovely, easy self.
Mellow, yeah.
I think that, this is whatever, my 12th Aussie or something like that. I know how to raise an Aussie at this point.
Yeah. But with Tula, you did like make it very clear that you were doing things a little bit differently.
Yes.
Like same kind of framework, but you wanted to stack things a little differently. And I remember like the first couple times I was doing like what we normally do, and you were like, no, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do it like this. So then it was like kind of re-talking to everybody, being like, okay, we're not going to put her in the crate like this. We're going to put her in the crate like this, or whatever the situation was.
So I really wanted to, as much as possible, use as little punishment as possible. And so I really wanted to leverage prevention and positive reinforcement. That's not to say that there isn't a role for punishment, because there always is. Always. I don't care if you tell me you're force-free. There is a role. Punishment is a useful tool to communicate what you like and don't like, right? And it does need to be employed in a thoughtful and experienced manner. However, much of it can be prevented by just approaching them differently.
And it really kind of puts more of like an explanation point on punishment, because we've talked about this before we started filming with Chula. It's when she gets in trouble, she really takes it personally, because we never really used punishment with her. She always we always prevented it or used some sort of positive reinforcement. So when she does do something really wrong, which I mean, lately she's just been kind of all over the place. So, but she takes it really personally, and it really makes an impact, and she really tries not to do it again, which is more than the other side of the coin, which is like doing more punishment and less prevention.
Right. So we don't want them to desensitize to the punishment, right? Because if they desensitize to it, your punishment has to become more intense, and then it's like an arms race, right?
Yep.
So we want to make sure. My goal was to use as little punishment as possible, and also knowing that when I did employ the punishment, it had to be always, and this is with our training dogs as well, I have to be absolutely certain that they know what they're being punished for, that they understand what I'm trying to communicate and what caused this reaction from me, right? It's usually a verbal interrupter. So in order to keep the verbal interrupter really amplified in her brain is to use it very, very seldomly. So it's kind of a shock value sort of a thing. Her worst behaviors right now, because she's a teenager, is redirecting on the other dogs. She's got that Aussie thing now. She waits for them to come down the stairs outside and then attacks somebody, play attacks.
So I think that is the one thing we did not do a good job at preventing, because we play fetch with her at a super young age. And so she learned that behavior super fast. And I feel like we've been like trying to make up for it.
All right. So that's a great example. So that is such a deep breed behavior, right? That reactivity, sort of redirecting on a moving object, right? So if you're playing fetch with 9 dogs, Tula's watching 8 dogs run down the hill. It woke something up in her brain, right?
Yeah.
And then she started redirecting on Journey, who is so non-confrontational. She just put up with it for a lot, which just led to that being so rewarding for Tula. And it's to the point where it's pretty bad at this point, where I have to actually go out with the group and make sure that she does not wait at the bottom of the stairs and harass everybody that comes down the stairs. That when somebody's taking a poop, she's not racing from across the yard and dive bombing them because she knows that they're in a compromised position and can't move out of her way.
She's so
right?
annoying,
She's
bro.
such a brat
Oh my God.
about that.
But it's funny because now when I play fetch with her, I only play fetch with her with the dogs that will defend themselves, because she won't go after Vivi, Deacon, or Twiggy. So I purposely bring her out with those three. And when she does, she gets pinned to the ground and she won't do it for the rest of the time. If not, stop playing fetch in total, which I'm just like, karma's a bitch. Sorry.
And Journey has intensified her corrections
Yeah.
tremendously because Twiggy does not get it. She's in
Tula.
that teenage, Tula. She's in that teenage mindset where they just, they have like a protective, like a shield around their brain, and no actual valuable information can get through the shield. It drives me crazy. Once hormonally she sort of gets over this hump, she'll start, I think, reacting better to the corrections, taking the corrections for what they're for, which is to communicate, I don't like that, and don't repeat it. So we kind of went off on a tangent. That's something I didn't do well.
Yeah.
With
That,
Tula.
well, I feel like, it's also breed based, but also bloodline based. And because we don't know a lot about her bloodline, we approached it like we would approach one of our bloodline dogs. And, it just kind of spiraled. And then now it's more of a management behavior because we didn't prevent it.
Right. Which, I mean, this goes to show you how important it is to know the breed you have or the predominant behavior traits that your mixed breed has.
Yeah.
So that you can be more prepared, because like digging for a dachshund, right? Or barking for a beagle, reactivity, redirecting on a moving object for a herding dog is so incredibly intense and rewarding. So they really only have to practice it once for it to be like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And then now you suddenly have an ingrained behavior that you have to back out of.
Well, now suddenly it was really cute when she was a puppy running after everybody. And now she's a full grown dog and has full adult teeth and now is doing it. And I think that's where prevention is super key with puppies is, oh, it's really cute that your puppy jumps on you because they can't reach you because they're so low on the ground. But it's so important to prevent that behavior, because once they learn that, it's like almost impossible to train it and to even manage it, because you have to have a leash on them when you're trying to manage it. And once they get that loop and a person comes over and pets them when they do jump on them, then that loop, so it's so hard to manage that type of behavior once it starts. And I feel like we kind of run in that a lot with our training dogs.
Yeah, jumping on people is a hard one for almost every single dog that comes here, because it's such a natural response from the dog. They want to see you and they want to see your face. They don't want to say hi to your knees. They want to see your face. And that people's natural response is to say hello from a full stand instead of coming down and looping their thumb around the collar and saying hello that way, right? Our dogs are pretty good about not jumping.
And the type of jumping that they do, I don't mind. Like Meadow does that kind of lean on you. I don't really mind it.
Vivi puts her feet on me a lot, her front feet. Tula does a lot. But again, like you say, it's not
gutting you. It's
when
the gutting.
And when I say, I don't like that right now, they go,
just jump
okay,
off,
sorry. And they stop.
Yeah. It's the full on running across the room and gutting you in the stomach that kills my soul. I'm like, oh. Like Twiggy's excited and she jumps around you. Like she knows not to jump on me. She jumps around me because she's so high drive. So I know that's just a natural thing. And I've also did a lot of agility with her at a young age, which I would redo. So she is she's like a little jumping bean. But for the most part, she doesn't gut me when she jumps and actually makes contact.
Right.
It's the gutting.
And, when you're talking about a little tiny dog, like maybe a mini poodle, jumping is really hard for them because they're so low to the ground and they want to get your attention. And it does get attention, negative or positive, they don't really care, right? And of course, people are more tolerant for a little dog because generally they hurt you less. Jumping is always something that needs to be managed. The dogs that don't jump are usually the real big guys who don't feel the need to because they're much closer to eye level. You don't see a lot of, say, St. Bernards jumping on people because they don't have to. They're already up there.
And they're not athletic enough to do that.
Thank God.
So
back to Tula. Sophie generously pointed out that I did not get to do a good job preventing the reactivity. So that's something that we have to now manage for the rest of her life. To be fair, we have to manage with all our dogs. Like it's
Yeah.
such a natural, as people know who've been following us for years, just opening our door to let them outside, they all redirect on each other. That's a very
Aussie thing,
very herding dog thing. So we do the whole toss a handful of cookies, handful of kibble, right outside the door, and then open the door. Instead of running down, redirecting on each other, they stop immediately and sniff around for food. And then by the time they're done with that, they just trot down the stairs.
Well, then they have a dopamine release and then it calms them down and they go down
Except
and pee.
for Tula, who's then at the bottom of the stairs while they're all eating cookies, waiting for them to come down. So I walk out there with them and monitor them going down the stairs to make sure that she's not really harassing them too much.
Yeah, I don't let Tula outside. She goes out front.
Well, it depends on the time of day.
Yeah.
Definitely at night, she goes out front.
Yeah, I have no tolerance.
But
But
she's super...
otherwise, I think you've done an amazing job with her. I think that's like
She's
the
a
one
lovely
thing.
dog.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you've focused so much on prevention and positive reinforcement that you actually have not done very rigid training with her.
I've done no rigid training
Like
with
you've
her.
done nothing. But because you've kind of made her brain so open to absorbing new things and to look for you and look at what you're talking about and how your facial expressions are and all that stuff, she understands commands really well. Like, I mean, I think I brought her downstairs and I was doing something with the training dogs and I was putting them all in place beds because I think Buddy was here and I was working on his impulse control or something. And so everyone wanted to join and Tula wanted to join. And I was like, I don't think Mom's ever taught her a place. And
I never taught her down.
You never taught her down. You never taught her sit.
I mean, I do tell her to lay down, but I've never actually had a session where I told her what down is.
And even like the sitting was manding behavior. It was never, you never taught her how to sit. It was just
Same with down. She would figure out what I want and then lay down, but I never had a formal session with her.
Nope. And she learned place in like less than 20 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's relationship, right? So if I need her to do something that I've never officially taught her to do, because we have a good relationship and she knows I'm trying to communicate something and she knows that it feels good to give me what I want in the form of attention or food, right? Or play. She's very, very motivated to try to figure out what I want.
You can literally see her wheels turning in her brain when you ask her something. She's like, "Wait, what is this? This is what you want, or this, or this?" And then you mark it, and she's okay, cool. And now it's like cataloged.
Yeah, I have to say that out of all of our dogs, all of my dog rearing, I'm the most proud of her, of the results I've had with her. It makes sense. She's like my 22nd dog or something like that. I had a lot of dogs. But I'm really, I mean, right now she's maybe Gianna and Maya and Brianna and Daddy and you and Jacob would not say that her barking is so great right now, but she's in a fear stage.
It's not it is the barking, but it's not, it's the tone.
She has a horrible bark.
She's like the worst bark I've ever heard. I've never even heard a dog bark like that before.
Yeah, it's like piercing, high-pitched, like puppy bark.
She hasn't grown out of it. It's like the vocal cords have just gotten like adapted to her as an adult. It's terrible.
Yeah, and she's going through her last fear stage. And now when she sees people before where she never had a reactivity problem with new people, suddenly she's afraid of new people for the first few minutes. And that results in barking. I have to just keep reminding everybody. It's a stage. She'll get through it.
And we've had Gianna here for a while at this point. And 2.5 weeks. And it's funny, like she barks. And she barks at me, Jacob, and Dad. But like, it's like a happy. You can't really. It's hard to get mad at her because she's happy about it.
Well, it's
like
an emotional bark.
Yeah, it's a, hi, how are you? But can we do it? Can you greet me a different way?
No, it's and she doesn't do that with me generally. So it's an excitement thing for sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely fear-based, at this stage. That will wane. The fact that we've had so many people coming and going over the past several weeks, it's been really good for all of the dogs. Journey in particular has done amazing.
Oh my gosh. Well, Journey's like, I feel like the second dog that you're really proud of, which makes sense. But you've worked the hardest on her.
Yeah, but Journey has some baggage.
Yeah, but
Tula doesn't have any baggage.
No. But like Journey, I don't know. I'm
No,
so
I've
proud
done a
of
ton of
Journey.
work with Journey, and I'm proud of the progress she's made. I'm particularly pleased to see how well she's adjusted to people coming and going lately.
And even moving around the house. Like
Yeah,
I'm always
letting
like
people
super.
touch her, which she never did before. So she definitely is maturing, mellowing out.
But she's almost 3, so that makes
No,
sense.
she is 3.
Oh, she is 3? I thought she was
Twiggy
like.
was 3 in June, and
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Journey was 3 in September.
Well, then that makes sense.
So going forward, she should get better and better.
Yep.
But, the more people we can have to the house on a regular basis, the better it is for them. The more experience, the more desensitization. With Tula, let's think of some of the things that I've prevented entirely. I'm not sure. Can you think of any?
Well, she's
What we
really good at recall.
Yes.
She's
Yes.
amazing at recall. I never worry about like her running off ever. But we've done that with like most of our dogs.
Recall, I think we're really good at with all of our dogs.
Yeah, recall is probably the easiest thing to teach them, in my opinion.
None of our dogs counter surf ever. It's one of those things that you have to catch the first time it happens, and you have to be so demonstrative in your displeasure. You really have to shock and awe, kind of have a shock and awe approach, which does not require physical contact, but
No.
usually does require me chasing them around, clapping my hands and stamping my feet, and just completely losing my mind, so that they think I never want to do that again. Holy shit.
Make it really uncomfortable.
Because I cannot live with counter surfers.
Nope.
A good, it's interesting. If you put them in the back of my car, I don't have a barrier between the way back, and the middle seat. And they know, I'd like to say that I trained them to stay in the back, but I didn't. I just never allowed them to go in the middle seat. And after you get to a certain point, when you're preventing something, the current behavior, which is staying in the back, becomes the habit. And it never occurs to them to do the other thing, which is jump over the back of the seat and sit on the leather seat, right?
Well, I'm going to correct you a little bit. Originally, we had a barrier there.
Yes.
And
years ago,
and it was, we had Ruby, Remy, Meadow, and Ty. The only one who jumps over the seat is Meadow, because we had a barrier there and she jumped through a couple times, and it was rewarding when we weren't in the car. So now she's the only one who jumps over. But otherwise, all the other dogs have taught them that we just don't jump through the seat. And even if Meadow jumps in the middle seat, no one else will.
Yeah. And if I say, get in the back, she hops in the back, and then we'll stay there. The other dogs are so habituated to being in the back that if you ask them to come over the seat and sit in the middle, they would be so uncomfortable.
Yeah, they don't like
which
it.
is exactly what I want, right? I want them to be, I want to create the space where I want them. I want that to be the most comfortable, sought out space for them. And the place that I don't want them, I want them to think I'm super uncomfortable. I don't want this. This is uncomfortable.
Which is why crate training is so important, and one of, I think, the main pillars of prevention. Because if you have really good relationship, or if your dog has a really good relationship with their crate, they know that's a safe space, and then you can prevent a lot of behavior like separation anxiety, barking at random objects out the window, chewing on things you don't want them to, potty training, big one, preventing housebreaking.
Yeah, so if you go to prevention tools, I mentioned the leash, right?
Leash, crate.
The other huge one is crate training.
Yeah, huge.
Right? Because you're preventing them learning incompatible behaviors, like say the chewing or counter surfing when you're not home, right? Scratching at the door, whatever. 500 million things you can prevent by putting them in the crate. And then you get them through that young stage, right? That developmental stage where those things would be more apt to happen naturally. And you get them to an adult stage where those things are less likely to be natural, behaviors, because now they're mature. And you completely circumvent all of that. I mean, that is a very good point. The crate is the number one prevention tool you can use.
Mm-hmm. That's why I like people who don't crate train their dogs. I don't know how you do it, because you're on duty 100% of the time.
You know what always makes me crazy is when people call inquiring about training, and then they tell me all the incompatible behaviors their dog is doing, all the typical stuff, right? And then they say something to me like, I want to bring them in 3 months when I go on vacation. Not right now.
Yeah, we've talked about
And I
this.
think, why would you want your dog to continue to rehearse those behaviors for 3 more months? So it's harder to ever get to the point where they don't think about it anymore. You never get to that point. Then it's a heavy management and training protocol you're dealing with for the rest of their lives.
I think what they're thinking is, I've already lived with it. So what is another couple months, right?
But it is important.
But it is important. And we cannot fix those natural chaining behaviors in 3 weeks. We can get them to a point where they understand that this is a behavior I don't want and this is what I prefer to have. But it's going to be a lot more work for the owner to have to do. Then if you bring them in earlier, we can try to re-navigate that natural behavior, especially when they're a young puppy and their brain is so malleable. And then you don't have to do as much work when you go home.
Right.
You know, but people don't have the same train of thought that we do with dogs.
For sure.
So, you know, I don't really always blame people. Everyone's doing their best.
Yeah, but usually when they describe the behaviors, I'm like, how are you even living with this dog?
Yeah, I feel that way about
And you want to do it for 3 more months before you bring the dog here?
I mean, but you and me have very high standards.
I mean, when you talk about prevention and the things that, and this is true for everybody, right? You have things that they go on a priority scale, right? And, you know, you say our dogs are really good with recall, and all of our dogs, except for Vivi, all of our dogs are really good with recall, except for Vivi, because we did not raise Vivi.
Nope.
We got her when she was almost 4.
And plus, we kind of talked about this the last podcast, relationship.
Right. Vivi, right. So last time we talked about Vivi comes when called because of the relationship I have with her, not because she wants to.
Nope, not at all. She never wants to. And sometimes we have to go out there and get her from.
But she's not a runner.
No,
she
she
just
doesn't
maybe
run.
will stay and sniff that pile of whatever
For
until you walk over and go, "Are you kidding me? Come on." And she'll be like, "Oh, okay, I'm coming."
My bad. I
Right.
didn't realize you were calling me. Okay,
So I mean, the
girl.
things that are like super important to us are, I've already mentioned, counter surfing is an absolute. I have zero tolerance for counter surfing, and I have zero tolerance for a dog without good recall. Consequently, those two things our dogs are really solid on because it's something that we prioritize.
And housebreaking.
And well, yeah, but
Tula, that's another
I
one.
had a big poop in my room last night
Well,
at 3
yeah,
in the morning, but
he's an
it wasn't
old
his fault. It
man.
wasn't his fault. He was sick, but my God.
But
Nothing,
for
nothing
the
like
most
being
part-
woken at 3:30 in the morning with an assault on your nose.
Don't talk about dad like that.
Not dad. Ty.
That is another thing that's interesting with Tula. I'm sorry, I'm pointing out all the not great things.
Well,
Tula has very rare.
That's not training. It's her bladder development.
I know, man. Oh my gosh, it's like I get the nervous pee, like
Which she did last night, by the way,
Yeah.
as I'm cleaning up the poop. Then
Oh
she
my
went over and got in Deacon's face, and he corrected her, and she went, ooh, boo, peed on the floor. I'm like, now I gotta clean up pee.
Yeah, I get that because that's just she'll grow out of that.
Social behavior.
But it's like, it's just like asked to go out, and I just let you out an hour ago, and I walked in the other room and stepped in a pile of pee.
Okay, hold on. To be fair, we don't teach our dogs to tell us when they have to go out.
They stand by the door though.
She hasn't figured that out yet because it's not something I've ever reinforced. Number 2, if you let Tula out at the designated times, she's 100% housebroken. There's no issue at all.
No, she pees immediately, but then
But if you forget, so
true, if you forget to let her out,
she
at the
goes out at
time-
7 in the morning with the group. Then usually around 9, between 9 and 10, when I'm heading upstairs to shower and dress, I have to let her out again to pee. If I don't do that, she will pee at some point over the next 2 hours because her body is so.
rehearse to
Yeah.
peeing at certain times.
Then we do our training walks, come back. Everyone goes out at noon, right? Then she's good until 5 o'clock.
It's strange.
I don't let her out from 1 to 5 unless she's drunk a lot of water or something like that, because that's not part of our schedule. And then she goes out at 5, and then I don't let her out again until between 8 and 9 when I let them out the last time. So it's just that her body is so habituated to those times. If you forget letting her out in one of those times, she will pee on the floor. She never poops inside. Never.
No, never ever poops.
So
But
it's physical development of her bladder, period.
Yeah.
And we just have to be patient. I mean, Twiggy was just as bad, if not worse. Remember how long it took for her to not be in the house?
Yeah.
You don't remember that?
I do.
It was forever.
I feel like it was like 9 months and she was done. I didn't think it was
she was
a year.
well over a year. Drove me crazy. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah. It's hard, especially when you have like Ruby housebroke in like 2 seconds. You remember that?
Well, you also have to look at the number of dogs we have. So it's really easy to housebreak a dog when you have 1 or 2 or even 3 dogs, because there's only 3 of them. When you got 9, it's a whole different ball game, you know? So, you know, Ty, they're so funny. Last night, I'll wake up if I hear pacing in the room. And I heard pacing, and the thing is, I'll tell whoever it is to go lay down. And if I tell them twice and they don't lay down, I know someone has to go out. So that's called
I know what you're talking about. I can't think of the word though.
intelligent disobedience.
Yeah,
That's what that's
yeah.
called. That's what I think Guiding Eyes for the Blind service dogs coined that phrase, right? Because a service dog, if you tell them to walk on, and because it's a green light and you're blind, and there's a car coming, it's going to run the light, the dog has to be able to override your command and go, no, 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 I'm not going to walk forward. Intelligent disobedience. So that's what that is. When I say go lay down twice, if the dog is still pacing, I know it's because they've got to go out. And then I sit up, and usually they start jumping around like fools, like, ooh, I got to go, I got to go.
Dance.
Yeah. So I sit up, and it's Ty, and Deacon says, I have to go out too. Okay, whatever. What's the matter at this point? So I let them both out. They were out for a while. They came back in, and we went back to sleep. And then Ty, I guess, had to go really bad because an hour later, there's a poop all over my floor, all over my goddamn rug. So I had to wash the rug this morning at 8 a.m. I don't know where I was going with this.
I think we were just talking about housebreaking. And Tula not being, well, she is housebroken, but.
Right. So they figured out how to communicate to me that they need to go out, even though we've never taught them to ring a bell or scratch on the door or whine at the door. And then that takes observation, right?
Yeah.
You have to actually pay attention. You didn't pay attention to Twiggy, and she pooped on your chest. So there you go.
That was a terrible day.
Because you're asleep like the dead.
I know.
And she probably asked you to go out like 50 times, and you sleep like the dead. So she
I
said,
know.
oh, yeah, I'm going to poop right on your chest.
That's not my fault.
I think it 100% was your fault.
Well, no, I
was 100%
REM sleep. I didn't even smell it. I don't even know how long it was there because it was cold. But
Oh my God.
I sat up and it was cold when it went in my hand, so it was there for a while.
Well, when I came back inside and I cleaned up the poop and everything, the room still stunk, and it was like 12 degrees last night. It was very cold last night. And I had to really open the window wide at that point because the rooms just smelled horrific. So we all just hunkered under my blankets for another hour.
And held your
in the
nose.
frigid room. And then the scent gets in your nose, and you don't know if the room still smells or if it's just all stuck in your nose.
To be fair, I didn't smell anything this morning, so.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Maya was like, why is somebody carpet cleaning at 8 a.m. this morning when you were downstairs? That's why.
Our house is loud.
Our house is loud. Gianna was here as well, and I told her the story, and she goes, oh, I think I heard you at 3:30. And I go, no, you probably heard Gary. Remember, he gets up at 2:30. I said, this is a 24-hour house. Maybe there is an hour, maybe 2, where someone is not awake in this house, but pretty much this is a 24-hour house.
Yeah, because like I think,
No one could ever break into the middle of the night because
No.
somebody's always awake.
well,
in this
they would
house.
get attacked by 9 dogs. It would be a terrible idea. They would
True.
hopefully they would do some research before breaking into our house.
And did you hear what I said about the garage door this morning? That was so weird.
I don't like that.
So then
You
I
gotta
was,
reset it.
I didn't tell you. So I was moving over to I would think I was collecting the garbage to take outside from the mess in my room. And I walked to the door that goes into the garage. And just as I'm getting ready to touch the handle, the garage door went open. Yeah. And I was like, that sounds like the garage door. And I opened the door and the garage door was opening. So I thought, oh, God, maybe Dad's home from work. Maybe something happened. Nobody in the driveway. It wasn't a ghost. Clearly somebody has our freaking code. Remember that happened at the other house and we had to change the freaking code?
Yeah.
It's not a ghost.
No, she doesn't believe in
I
supernatural.
don't believe in ghosts. You can't scare me. You can't scare me.
Literally
Ghosts.
just rewatched that documentary about the Cecil Hotel. Ghost. Ghost.
It's a ghost.
You can tell me all the time. It doesn't scare me.
Then you go stay at the Cecil Hotel. Come back to me.
You know what scares me? People. Real live people.
Well, that's
not
true.
Not spirits. Not spooks.
All the above.
Real live people.
All the
They're
above.
the ones that we need to worry about.
All the above. No, I'm just.
I feel like we're getting off topic.
We are.
I don't even remember. I think we were talking about stuff I prevented with Tula. She's a good dog. I don't think she gets enough credit in this house.
Not right now. It's annoying right now.
We're good. We're at 63 minutes.
I know. I'm just trying to think of what else. I think we covered my whole list.
Okay. So we're done?
I don't know. What else do you want? Do you have anything else to say?
Well, you said you would raise Tula.
Twiggy?
Twiggy. We have too many T-dogs.
We
And
do.
actually, I was thinking of a T name for our next dog.
Tootsie.
No, not Tootsie. I can't remember what it was. It was a good name, though. And I was like, and then we'll have Tiberius, Twiggy, Tula,
Tolliver.
Tolliver, Tivian, Teddo, and
Toby.
I liked that name, though. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, Twiggy, you said you would do it differently now. Give me 2 examples of how you would raise her differently.
I think I raised her very much so like 50% positive, 50% negative. And I think I would do more like positive. I would do maybe like 70-80 positive and less punishment.
Punishment doesn't work very well on Twiggy.
It not at all, because she's has such high drive that you really have to be pretty intense with her when you do not like something.
And she very much pushes against it.
Yeah. And she's just
So
very
yes, you'd have to be a better dog trainer with her.
more patient, less corrections.
To be fair, she would try your patience.
I think that's, I always have this saying, you don't get the dog you want, you get the dog you need. Girl, I do not have very good patience, but like she's really pushed my limits with the patience. I feel like I've gotten
She's
better.
a tough dog, but she's also highly trained and fun as hell.
She's
she's a
so
good girl.
fun.
But you know what's really nice is that Raven is here for boarding, who's another pretty high drive female. Actually, she's a mini Aussie, but she's the same size as Twiggy. We didn't think they'd get along at all because they're so much the same dog. And actually, they're like best buds. It's the cutest thing.
They're literally the same dog.
I know. It's so cute to see Twiggy like treat Raven like she's worthy. Like, you're worthy of my attention. I don't have to I don't have to look down my nose at you. You're pretty cool. You're pretty cool. So they're like not super, they don't play so much together, but they're really good parallel. They're like definitely on the same team.
Yeah. Yep.
Just
Like
not
they're-
very expressive.
Yeah. They like walk really well together. They like, as they walk together, they like frequently bump into each other and look at each other, which is so cute. And then when they play outside, they have really good rules with one another. So like when they play fetch, Raven does not bring the ball back, but Raven knows that Twiggy will. And if Twiggy can't find the ball, then Raven will go down to the bottom of the hill and do like that fox jump at the ball. And then I'll say Raven has it. And then Twiggy knows Raven's name and we'll go downstairs and find Raven, and Raven's like bunny hopping into the thing. And then Twiggy will bring the ball up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did not I wasn't confident that she could really live with another dog after what's going on with Journey. But the longer that we get from that incident, which made her depart from the pack for the most part.
And the longer she's been not intact.
Yes, that's definitely helped as well. The better she has been with other dogs, and the more hope that you could have her and get another dog, which would be nice. In theory, if Eli wasn't in the picture and you took Twiggy when you moved out, you could absolutely have another dog with her. No problem.
Yeah, it's
I would recommend that it's a male dog.
No, definitely a goofy male would be perfect. Like
Or an older
Buddy,
female already spayed. Like you couldn't have an intact female with her.
Yeah.
Or a really dominant male or female. Well, you could probably have a pretty dominant male with her, but definitely not a dominant female.
Yeah.
But she could live with lots of different types of dogs, which makes me happy.
Yeah.
But she's probably going to end up staying here when you move out.
I don't like to think about it.
Well, I'm glad that she's still here. I'm glad that we did not find a home for her and she's still here. She's a good girl. What do you mean?
I feel like you're gonna make me cry on the pod, but I don't know.
She has a great
She's
life.
a great dog, and
She
I feel
has
like
a great life. Stop it. She has a great life. You have to manage your feelings of guilt. Guilt is a choice.
Yeah, but it's hard.
It's not hard. It's easy. I'm kidding. It's hard. All right. We should probably wind up.
Yep.
I'm not sure what the moral of this podcast was. I'm not sure we made our point.
We just talked about our dogs the whole time.
Well, I think prevention is something that maybe people can be a little bit more conscious of when they're interacting with their dogs, particularly if you have, really important things that you don't want your dog to do, right? So we talked about the countersurfing and
Jumping and leash reactivity.
no, those
Digging.
those are negotiable. Countersurfing, it was something else that was absolutely unacceptable. With the jumping up and stuff, I can work around that. But there's a couple of things that are, recall was the other one. I can't live with a dog who doesn't have good recall, and I can't live with a dog who countersurfs. So that type of prevention has to be 100% perfect in order to preserve that.
And it's
a little
much
different for reinforcement because it's not really so much prevention. What's preventing is I'm preventing them from learning to not listen. So it's sort of like a triple negative, right?
yeah.
And we talked
It's
about
just
that with
hard
recall.
because once they do learn that behavior, you have like 14 years of their life that you have to tolerate or manage that behavior.
For sure.
Which is so much harder. And it's unpleasant to have that type of relationship with your dog and being like, well, you can't come in the kitchen because you countersurf.
Right. Or get mad at them every 10 seconds when they do countersurf.
Yeah. So it's
Or when they run off or don't come when you call them, that kind of thing. It was interesting. We have the wire hair pointing Griffon in here for
Dutch.
training. And he had an interesting response last night. He's only been here 2 nights. It was his second night, I think, last night. And I went to put him in his kennel, and he had a very interesting emotional response to being put in the kennel. Like he was playing keep away with me in the room. And part of the reason he's here is to do recall. They want to do recall with him. And now I see why they specifically were asking for recall, because I see that there's been some issue with him coming when called, even inside. And it's been handled in a way that's made him very spooky about it.
Yep. I thought it was just bratty behavior, and then you brought it up, and I was just, I have a very different, we are very different. We're the same trainer, but we have very different outlooks on certain things, which is why we work so well together as a team, because certain things that you don't like doing, I don't mind doing, and vice versa. So you told me about it, and I think this is why we work so well as trainers, is you told me about it, and you were like, yeah, I handled it this way. And I was like, oh, well, I handled it the complete opposite way.
Right.
So now we have to kind of come with some sort of an agreement on how we're going to handle it together. So he's getting a fair.
Well, so your handling of it was no nonsense. I'm picking up your leash and we're marching into the kennel and that's it.
Yeah, I just leave the leash on him when he's in there, and I just step on the leash, and he
he
goes
can't
in
get
there.
away,
Yeah.
and I just pick him up, you just walk him into the thing. It's not like it's a punishing thing.
No,
It's again, prevention. You're preventing the behavior I don't like from happening, so I can get my stuff done, get him in the kennel and close the door. For me, I looked at it like, okay, I see that there's some emotional baggage here just from his behavior. And that concerned me. Not to say that he's been abused in any way.
No, but it's
But clearly he's been upset by this. And he was having an emotional outburst. I didn't see it as bratty behavior. I saw it as an overwrought dog, an upset dog. So my approach was very much like, okay, we don't have to go in your kennel. I'm just going to sit here and I just want to pet you. I'm going to get up and walk to you and pet you. I'm not going to grab your collar and drag you into the kennel. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to, because me approaching him, anyone approaching him when he knows he's supposed to go do something, we now have to unwind that emotional response, right? Which is one of flight, right? To one of, oh, you're coming to get me? I feel good because you're going to give me scratches and it's going to be calm and feel good. So, yeah, a very different approach. But that kind of thing, again, none of our dogs do that kind of shit.
No.
Because we're so carefully cultivate the recall response in the house, outside, everywhere, because we always want them to look at us as a safe space.
plus,
Home base,
I
right?
think a lot of the times people get very emotional, like, oh, you're disobeying me, blah, 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 blah. And,
Well,
everyone's
and they
at fault.
escalate.
Well, and
Come now. Come, God
And then by the time the dog makes a good decision, you're so wrapped with anger and annoyance and frustration that then you grab the dog and you have the collar tight and you
it's
throw
all
them in
drama.
there and
Right.
you make it a big deal. And then the dog's like, oh, that was miserable. I'm never actually going to go to you now. Like, I'm like, that was terrible. Instead of the whole point of you, I mean, I imagine the person doing that is so they'll come right away next time and you don't have to do that. But the dogs don't think like that.
The dogs
So-
have the opposite reaction.
Which is why for me, I was just like, oh, he doesn't want to go in the kennel. Well, he doesn't like to come in from outside. So I leave the long line on him and I just step on the long line and go, nope, let's go inside. And then he snaps at the end of the long leash, self-corrects himself. He doesn't know I'm correcting him because I'm stepping on the leash. And then eventually he just walks inside or walks into the kennel.
Yeah, that we are doing different approaches, but both approaches require us to not be emotional or punishing, right?
And then once he goes in there, I'm like, oh, what a good guy. Blah, blah,
So
blah.
you want to prevent the behavior from happening and just go. That is part of what he needs, right? I want to work on how he feels about the situation so that he voluntarily goes. So I think it's a two-prong approach to this behavior, which I think is a good way to do it. And again, like you said, why we work so well together, because we have different approaches, but both approaches work on a different muscle, so to speak, of this response. So I will continue to work on him feeling better about it at night. And you certainly have to enforce rules and boundaries outside, which is when it's time to come in, we all come in. We don't play this game.
And plus, I kind of make it more desirable because Raven's kind of like that too. And she knows she's supposed to come inside. And so I do scatter feeding inside. So then they run inside because they're like, oh, I want to eat all the food before anyone else gets there. So he's learning that that's what the routine is.
Which is going to recondition his response.
Yep. And then in the kennel, anytime they go away with me, if it's not after the walk, which they're already leashed up, I always am feeding them dinner. So it's easier for me. It's much harder for you at night when you're not feeding them at all. And then obviously on top of that, if they're not food motivated, it's not, which for the first couple nights, he was like not interested in food.
Yeah, he was an interesting response last night because he had a full bowl of food and he actually ran past me and ran into the kennel and started gobbling his food down. And then I just went over and I did not slam the gate closed, which I think a lot of people would have done, right?
Yep.
Oh, he's in there. Let me slam the gate
And,
closed.
well, and then he does that jumping thing on the door.
So I just put my hand on the door, but didn't move to close it. And then he looked at that and then panicked and raced out of it again. And instead of me going, no, or any kind of sort of verbal interrupter, I just went, okay, and we just started over again. Me just approaching him and petting him and then moving away. Approaching, petting, moving away. Because I always want all of the dogs I work with to see me as a safe space. I am never afraid to go to her.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
But it's even more important for our training clients to feel that way because God forbid they get a leash breaks or a fence, somebody doesn't close a gate or something, and they get out of our outdoor enclosure. Not that that's ever happened, but things can happen.
Never know.
I always want our training dogs to look at us as a place of safety so that we can go, oh, no, come back. Oh, good dog. Not, I'm going to bolt.
And try to find my owner. And you're like,
So the first few days that they're with us is always the most precarious in that because they don't see us as a safe space because they don't know us from Adam.
and on top of it, we want to make sure that we kind of work through all these emotional responses because he's here to get e-collar trained. And so we want to make sure we have the baseline solid so it's not an emotional response and we're not using the e-collar as a punishment tool when he's not recalling.
A punishment tool on a behavior that he already has a deep-seated negative
Issue
emotional
with.
response
Yeah.
with. So that has to be completely resolved first before we introduce any kind of e-collar stuff. So I love challenges like this because it's so easy to explain to them. No. I'm a good guy. You don't have to act like that when someone calls you. When they figure that out, they're like, oh, thank God. They're so relieved. And, they really have better lives because of it. So I really enjoy working with something like that. So we'll keep you posted on maybe next week. We'll give him an update on how he's doing with that behavior. Maybe we should film it.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then we can have the progress. We'll post it on the training Instagram or something.
Yeah, I'll definitely put it on YouTube like we did with Buddy. Yeah, all right, maybe I'll do that later. All right, we should actually wind it up now because now we're at 80 minutes. It's actually not 80 minutes. I think it's...
I gotta go to school in 15.
All right, we gotta go,
okay.
we gotta go. All right, guys, thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on Dog for Thought. Bye! Dog for Thought is written and hosted by me, Sarah Brown, co-hosted by Sophie Brown, produced, edited, and original music by Jacob Brown. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye!